Fey King Thalanil Ravenspar stood atop the highest tower of Aimar, his summer palace. The fierce wind caused his long black hair to stream back from his head like a silk banner. It stirred the white fur cloak he clasped loosely around his lithe form. He drew the cloak tighter to keep out more of the stinging wind. Spring was here, but winter's last dying grasp still tinged the air with a bitter chill. Not to mention that the ruby-red silk mage's robes he wore beneath the cloak were made for warmer weather, or at least for sitting near a roasting fire. But it was always cold on Aimar's highest tower, even in high summer, let alone early spring. The wind seemed to want to freeze him into an ice statue, but he did not retreat down the steps into his beloved summer palace and join the revelry of his people as they celebrated winter's end. He stayed where he was. Twilight was falling all around him. The wall reflected the dying sunlight, obscuring the human kingdom of Rarea from his crimson-eyed gaze for a moment. He watched as the sun sank, and the milky jade color of the wall turned dark green and then black. The lights of Rerea's villages and the city of Dawnmore appeared as the sun dipped fully behind the horizon. These lights could now be seen twinkling in the wall's darkness like the reflection of stars in a black pool. A sense of melancholy stole over him. This was a feeling he had not allowed himself to experience in some time. He had avoided looking at the wall and Rerea beyond it to avoid such feelings. There had been a time when he had eagerly flown his wyvern, Hart, into Rerea. There had been a time when Rerea had seemed the most precious place in the world to him, for she lived there, Lady Maeve Ashton. His heart had quickened at the thought of being with her, even if it had meant roaming another land, a land that should have been, by rights, a part of his own empire, but had been ceded away in a vain attempt to buy peace between humans and the Fae. Yet he had not cared about that back then. Maeve had been all that had mattered, and he would have gladly given up claim to Rerea forever if that meant she would but smile. His hands tightened on the edges of his cloak. How foolish he had been. Love truly was blindness. He had abased himself for a mortal, and then she had rejected him in the end. She had never even explained to him why she had wanted nothing to do with him. She had just told him to go away and to never come back. He had thought her heartless at the time, despite the fact that her voice had been brittle as spring ice, and tears had welled in her eyes as large as summer rivers when she had said those words, as if she had not wanted to say them, but had to. Now he wondered if he had been wrong not to insist on an explanation for her change of heart. Now he wondered if his pride had not led him to lose the one person who mattered most. But it was too late now. Maeve was dead, and unless the wheel returned her to life again in another body, in another life, he would never see her again. Unless his own immortal one was cut short of eternity by a blade, poison, or a spell. Maeve was dead. But even if she were to be brought back, would they recognize each other, or would they be strangers? People whispered that her rejection of him stemmed from the fact that they could not marry. The Fae would never have accepted a human queen, not even one as brilliant and beautiful as her, with her ancient mixed blood and wisdom far beyond her mortal years. He'd promised her that as long as she lived, he would love only her. He would wed no other. She would be his one and only. In all but name, she would be his queen. But perhaps that had not been enough for her. He could think of no other reason for her to abandon him when he had needed her most. Or maybe he hadn't wanted to see another reason. He could still remember the last conversation they'd had before her rejection. It hadn't been about marriage, but rather about his brother, Marakoth, and about death.
"I do not know if I want you to see me wither and grow old, Thalanil,"
Maeve had said, as her right hand had self-consciously traced the still smooth skin of her left cheek.